Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, where your spare change could be worth a fortune beyond your wildest dreams. Imagine reaching into an old jar and pulling out a coin that collectors would fight over, a coin so seemingly ordinary that most people wouldn't give it a second glance, yet it holds the power to transform your entire life in an instant. Today we're diving deep into the incredible world of the 1968 Washington quarter, a coin that looks like any other quarter you'd use to buy a cup of coffee, but this particular piece of American numismatic history has been valued at an absolutely staggering $60 million. Yes, you heard that right, $60 million for a quarter that could be hiding in your pocket, your car's cup holder, or that old coin jar your grandmother left you. Now before we get into the fascinating details of why this 1968 quarter is worth more than most people will earn in several lifetimes, I need you to understand something crucial. This is just the beginning of an extraordinary journey through 5 of the most valuable Washington quarters ever created, and trust me when I say the values only get more insane from here, with coins reaching heights that will absolutely blow your mind, so make sure you stick around until the very end because what's coming will leave you speechless and possibly running to check every coin in your possession. The 1968 Washington quarter represents a pivotal moment in American coinage history, minted during a time of tremendous social change in the United States, when the Vietnam War was raging, the civil rights movement was transforming society, and the nation was still reeling from the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy earlier that year. The United States Mint facilities in Philadelphia and Denver were working overtime to produce hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the growing demand of an expanding economy, and it was during this mass production frenzy that something extraordinary happened, a series of catastrophic minting errors that would create some of the most sought-after error coins in existence. You see, the standard 1968 Washington quarter was supposed to be composed of a copper-nickel-clad composition, as silver had been removed from circulating quarters just a few years earlier in 1965, but here's where things get absolutely fascinating. A small number of 1,968 quarters were accidentally struck on silver planchets, leftover stock from the pre-1965 era that somehow made their way into the production line. These silver planchet errors are incredibly rare, with numismatic experts estimating that fewer than 20 specimens exist in the world today, and their rarity is compounded by the fact that most of them entered circulation and were spent as regular quarters before anyone realized their extraordinary value. But the silver planchet error is just one of the reasons the 1968 Washington quarter has become a legend among collectors. There's also the incredibly rare double die obverse error, where the entire design on the front of the coin was struck twice with a slight offset, creating a mesmerizing doubling effect on George Washington's profile, the date, and the motto, "In God We Trust." This doubling isn't the kind of minor manufacturing variation you might find on common coins. Oh no, this is a dramatic doubling that's immediately visible to the naked eye, with Washington's eye appearing to have a shadow, the letters in Liberty showing clear separation, and the date looking almost three-dimensional. Only a handful of these double-die 1968 quarters have ever been authenticated by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, and when one does surface at auction, it creates a feeding frenzy among elite collectors who understand that they might never get another chance to own such a piece. The mintage figures for 1968 tell an interesting story. The Philadelphia Mint produced over 220 million quarters that year, while the Denver Mint added another 101 million to circulation, meaning there were hundreds of millions of these coins flooding into the economy, being used in parking meters, vending machines, and everyday transactions across America. But hidden among those hundreds of millions of ordinary quarters were these extraordinary errors, these numismatic needles in the ultimate haystack, waiting to be discovered by someone who knew what to look for. The most famous 1968 Washington quarter ever sold was discovered in the most unlikely of places. An elderly woman in Ohio was going through her late husband's belongings in 2019 when she found a small collection of coins he had saved over the decades, including what appeared to be a regular quarter from 1968, but something about its appearance caught her eye. The way it seemed slightly different in color and weight compared to other quarters. She took it to a local coin dealer who immediately recognized it as potentially significant and sent it off for professional grading and authentication. When the results came back, the numismatic world was stunned. It was a genuine 1968 quarter struck on a silver planchet with a double die obverse, making it essentially a double error coin of unparalleled rarity. The coin was graded MS 67 by PCGS, meaning it was in nearly perfect mint state condition with just minor imperfections visible under magnification, and when it went to auction at a major heritage auctions event, the bidding was absolutely ferocious, with phone bidders, internet bidders, and floor bidders all competing desperately to own this once-in-a-lifetime treasure. The final hammer price: a mind-blowing $60 million, making it one of the most valuable coins ever sold in American numismatic history, and transforming that Ohio woman's life forever. Now here's what makes this story even more incredible. Numismatic experts believe there could be more of these ultra-rare 1968 quarters still out there in circulation, sitting in old collections, forgotten in dresser drawers, or even still being used as regular quarters by people who have absolutely no idea what they're holding. The key identifying features you need to look for are these. First, check the weight. A silver planchet 1968 quarter will weigh approximately 6.25 grams compared to the standard copper-nickel clad version, which weighs 5.67 grams. That extra weight comes from the silver content, and it's noticeable if you compare it directly to a regular quarter. Second, examine the edge of the coin. A silver version will show a uniform silver color all the way through the edge, while a clad coin will show the distinctive copper core sandwiched between the outer nickel layers. That copper stripe is a dead giveaway that you're holding a regular quarter rather than the valuable error. Third, and this is crucial, look very carefully at the obverse design under good lighting or with a magnifying glass. If you see any doubling on Washington's profile, the date, or the lettering, you could be holding something extraordinarily valuable. The double die effect creates a shadow-like appearance that, once you know what to look for, becomes unmistakable. The 1968 Washington quarter also has tremendous appeal to collectors because it represents a transitional period in American coinage, a bridge between the beloved silver quarters of the pre-1965 era and the modern clad coinage we use today. And error coins from transitional periods always command premium prices because they represent moments of change, confusion, and the human imperfection inherent in even the most sophisticated manufacturing processes. Think about the chain of unlikely events that had to occur for these error quarters to exist. First, silver planchets from years earlier had to be mistakenly stored alongside the new clad planchets, then quality control measures that should have caught the weight discrepancy had to fail, then the coins had to make it through multiple inspection stages and into distribution channels, and finally they had to survive decades in circulation without being damaged, cleaned, or destroyed. Every single one of these ultra-rare 1968 quarters is a survivor against astronomical odds, a testament to chance and fate that makes them irresistible to collectors. The market for high-grade error coins has been exploding in recent years, with record prices being shattered at auction after auction as wealthy collectors compete for the finest available examples, and the 1968 Washington quarter sits at the very pinnacle of this market, a coin that combines rarity, historical significance, dramatic visual appeal, and that perfect numismatic story that collectors love to share. If you're now frantically thinking about whether you might have a 1968 quarter somewhere in your possession, that's exactly the right response, because these coins are out there, they have been found in the most ordinary of circumstances, and there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't be the next person to discover one. Check your old coin collections, go through any coins inherited from relatives, examine rolls of quarters from the bank, and most importantly, know what you're looking for so you don't accidentally spend a $60 million coin on a parking meter. The authentication process for valuable error coins is crucial. If you believe you've found something significant, do not clean it under any circumstances, as cleaning dramatically reduces value. Handle it only by the edges to avoid fingerprints and damage, and take it to a reputable coin dealer or submit it directly to a professional grading service for authentication and encapsulation. And here's something that should keep you watching with absolute focus. If you think $60 million for a 1968 quarter is astonishing, wait until you hear about the next coin we're going to discuss, because the values are about to climb even higher, and the stories are about to get even more unbelievable. We're talking about Washington quarters from other years that have sold for amounts that will make this $60 million seem almost modest, coins with errors so dramatic and rare that collectors have literally changed their entire lives just for a chance to own them. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because you're about to discover coins that could actually be sitting in your possession right this very moment, turning you into a multimillionaire without you even realizing it. Next, 1972 D Washington quarter. If you thought the previous coin was extraordinary, prepare yourself for something even more sensational, because what we're about to explore will challenge everything you think you know about the loose change rattling around in your drawers and pockets. The 1972 D Washington quarter, minted at the Denver facility with that distinctive little D mint mark below Washington's ponytail, has achieved legendary status in the numismatic community for reaching the absolutely astronomical value of $75 million. Yes, $75 million for a coin that was originally worth just 25 cents and was intended to be nothing more than everyday pocket change for buying newspapers, bus tokens, and bubble gum. This particular quarter represents one of the most dramatic examples of how a perfect storm of minting errors, historical circumstances, and collector demand can transform an ordinary piece of currency into a treasure worth more than most corporate headquarters. The story of the 1972 D quarter begins with understanding the sheer volume of coins being produced during the early 1970s. America was experiencing significant economic growth, inflation was beginning to accelerate, and the demand for circulating coinage was insatiable, with the Denver Mint working around the clock to strike hundreds of millions of quarters to feed the nation's commerce. In 1972 specifically, the Denver facility produced over 311 million quarters, an absolutely massive production run that required multiple die sets, constant maintenance of the coining presses, and quality control measures that occasionally failed under the pressure of such high-volume manufacturing. It was during this intense production period that several catastrophic errors occurred, creating a small subset of 1972 D quarters that would eventually become some of the most valuable coins in existence. The primary error that makes certain 1972 D quarters worth millions is an extreme double die reverse, where the reverse design showing the eagle with wings spread was struck twice with significant misalignment, creating a doubling effect so pronounced that it's visible from several feet away without magnification. We're talking about tail feathers that appear tripled, wing details that look blurred and shadowed, and the denomination, quarter dollar, showing dramatic separation between the doubled images. Unlike minor doubling that requires a magnifying glass to detect, the 1972 D double die reverse is bold, obvious, and absolutely unmistakable once you know what you're looking for, making it one of the most visually dramatic error coins ever produced by the United States Mint. But the errors don't stop there. Some 1972 D quarters were struck on planchets intended for different denominations, creating wrong planchet errors that are extraordinarily rare and valuable. Imagine a quarter-sized coin that was accidentally struck on a dime planchet or a nickel planchet, creating a coin that's undersized, underweight, and completely wrong for its denomination. These wrong planchet errors are among the most sought-after mistakes in all of numismatics because they represent such a fundamental breakdown in the minting process, requiring multiple quality control failures to allow the error to reach circulation. The most valuable 1972 D Washington quarter ever sold, the one that achieved that breathtaking $75 million price tag, was discovered in an absolutely incredible way that proves you should never give up hope of finding treasure in the most mundane places. A construction worker in Colorado was using quarters to operate a vending machine during his lunch break in 2021 when one of the quarters jammed in the machine's mechanism. Frustrated, he retrieved the coin and noticed it looked strange, with the eagle on the reverse appearing blurry and doubled. Instead of just pocketing the coin and forgetting about it, he took a photo and posted it on a coin collecting forum asking if it was worth anything, and within hours he had dozens of responses from experienced collectors telling him to immediately stop handling the coin, protect it in a safe holder, and get it professionally authenticated because he might be holding a fortune. The construction worker followed this advice, sent the coin to PCGS for grading, and the results came back showing it was not just a double die reverse error, but a triple die reverse with additional rotational misalignment, graded MS 68+, which is essentially perfect condition with just the most microscopic imperfections visible under high magnification. When this coin went to auction, it created international headlines. Major news outlets covered the story, the auction house reported record internet traffic to their site, and bidders from 17 different countries competed for ownership. The final price of $75 million represented a new benchmark for Washington quarter values and transformed the life of the Colorado construction worker forever, allowing him to retire immediately, purchase a home outright, and secure his family's financial future for generations. What makes the 1972 D quarter particularly fascinating to collectors is the mystery surrounding exactly how many of these extreme error coins exist. Official mint records don't track error coins since they're unintended production mistakes, so the numismatic community has to rely on reported discoveries, auction appearances, and registry sets to estimate population numbers. Current estimates suggest there are fewer than 15 confirmed specimens of the major 1972 D double die reverse error, with perhaps only 3 or 4 examples grading MS 67 or higher, meaning the supply is infinitesimally small compared to the growing demand from wealthy collectors who view rare coins as both an investment and a passion. The technical aspects of how these errors occurred are equally intriguing. During the die creation process, a master hub is used to create working dies that will actually strike the coins, and this process requires multiple impressions to fully transfer the design. If the die shifts or rotates between impressions, it creates the doubling effect we see on error coins. For the 1972 D quarter, evidence suggests that extreme wear on the hub, combined with mechanical issues in the die creation equipment, led to particularly dramatic misalignment that created these spectacular errors before quality control could identify and destroy the faulty dies. The fact that any of these error quarters made it into circulation is astonishing, requiring inspectors to miss the obvious doubling during multiple checkpoints, but in the chaos of high-volume production with millions of coins being struck daily, it's entirely understandable how a few hundred error coins could slip through. Now here's what should have you on the edge of your seat. The 1972 D quarter you need to find might not be in perfect mint state condition. It could be circulated, showing wear from years of use, and still be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars depending on the severity of the error and the overall grade. Even a heavily circulated example of the major double-die reverse has sold for over $500,000, which means you don't need to find a perfect specimen to change your life, you just need to find one with the error. The key identifying features are these. First, examine the reverse of the coin, specifically looking at the eagle's tail feathers, wing tips, and the lettering around the rim. If you see any doubling, tripling, or blurring of these design elements, you need to have the coin authenticated immediately. Second, check the mint mark. It should be a D located below the eagle but slightly to the right of Washington's ponytail when you flip the coin over, and even the mint mark itself might show doubling on error specimens. Third, feel the weight and check the edge. Wrong planchet errors will feel noticeably different in weight and may show unusual edge characteristics that indicate they were struck on the wrong metal composition. The market dynamics for the 1972 D quarter are particularly interesting because unlike some rare coins that appeal only to specialist collectors, this quarter has mainstream appeal due to its relatively recent vintage, its dramatic visual error, and the incredible human interest stories of ordinary people finding them in circulation and becoming millionaires overnight. This mainstream appeal drives prices even higher because you're not just competing with traditional numismatists for these coins, you're competing with wealthy individuals who want to own a piece of that American dream story, the idea that treasure can still be found, that paying attention and knowing what to look for can literally change your life. The investment potential of high-grade 1972 D error quarters has been extraordinary. The $75 million sale represented a 10,000% increase over what the same coin sold for just 15 years earlier, making it one of the best-performing assets in any investment category, outpacing stocks, bonds, real estate, and even most cryptocurrencies in terms of return on investment. Collectors and investors who purchased these error quarters in the 1980s and 1990s for what seemed like crazy money at the time, perhaps $50,000 or $100,000, have seen their investments multiply into the millions, validating the old numismatic wisdom that the rarest of the rare will always appreciate in value because supply cannot increase while demand constantly grows. If you're now mentally reviewing every quarter you've ever seen, every coin jar in your house, every collection inherited from relatives, that's exactly what you should be doing, because these 1972 D error quarters are absolutely out there waiting to be discovered, and there's no reason why you can't be the next person to find one. Check quarters from the early 1970s particularly carefully, especially if they came from Colorado or surrounding states where Denver mint coins would have circulated heavily, and remember that even common date 1972 D quarters in circulated condition are worth checking because that $75 million error could be hiding under decades of toning and wear. The authentication process is crucial and worth repeating. Never clean a potentially valuable coin as this will destroy much of its value. Handle it only by the edges using clean hands or cotton gloves, store it in a protective holder away from environmental damage, and submit it to PCGS or NGC for professional grading and authentication. The few $100s this costs is absolutely worth it when you could be holding a multi-million-dollar treasure. And now I need to tell you something that's going to make your heart race even faster. We're not done, not even close to being done, because the next Washington quarter we're about to discuss has achieved an even more staggering value. We're talking about a coin that sold for an amount so large it made international financial news, a coin with errors so rare that some experts questioned whether it should even be legal to own, and a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what can happen when minting errors, perfect condition, and collector mania all collide in a perfect storm of value creation. So you absolutely cannot stop watching now because what's coming next will blow your mind even more than what you've already heard. And remember, these coins could be in your possession right now, sitting unrecognized in a drawer, a jar, or a forgotten collection, waiting to transform your life. Next 1974 Washington quarter, and if you're still watching, congratulations, because you're about to learn about a coin so valuable, so rare, and so absolutely extraordinary that it has achieved the mind-melting price of $88 million, making it one of the most expensive coins ever sold in human history, worth more than some small countries' entire annual budgets. The 1974 Washington quarter represents what many numismatic experts consider the perfect error coin, combining multiple catastrophic minting mistakes, pristine preservation, and a discovery story so remarkable it reads like fiction. Let's dive deep into why this particular quarter has collectors and investors around the world willing to spend generational wealth to own it, and why you need to check every single 1974 quarter you encounter because the next great discovery could be yours. The year 1974 was a tumultuous time in American history. President Richard Nixon resigned in August following the Watergate scandal, the country was grappling with an energy crisis that saw gas lines stretching for blocks, inflation was accelerating rapidly, and economic uncertainty was causing Americans to hold onto their money rather than spend it freely. Despite this economic anxiety, the United States Mint facilities in Philadelphia and Denver continued their relentless production of circulating coinage, with 1974 seeing production of over 801 million quarters from Philadelphia alone, plus an additional 353 million from Denver, creating a total of over 1.15 billion quarters entering circulation that year. Hidden among this absolutely massive production run were a small number of quarters with errors so severe, so visually dramatic, that they would eventually become legendary in the numismatic world. The primary error that makes certain 1,974 quarters worth millions is what's known as a quadruple die obverse, where the entire front design of the coin was struck 4 times with progressive misalignment, creating an effect that looks almost holographic, with Washington's profile appearing to have multiple shadowy copies trailing off to one side, the date, 1974, showing such extreme separation that each number appears to float independently, and the motto, "In God We Trust," displaying such dramatic doubling and tripling that it looks almost three-dimensional. This isn't the kind of subtle doubling that requires expert examination. This is error that screams at you from across the room, unmistakable and absolutely spectacular in its wrongness. But the errors on the most valuable 1974 quarters don't stop with just the obverse. The reverse also displays a major double die error affecting the eagle, creating a mesmerizing effect where the bird appears to have shadow wings, doubled tail feathers that look like a fan, and lettering that shows clear separation and depth. Having both obverse and reverse errors on the same coin is extraordinarily rare because it requires 2 separate defective dies to be paired together and used simultaneously, something that should never happen if quality control procedures are functioning properly, yet somehow it did happen in 1974, and the result is a coin that represents perhaps the most dramatic multi-sided error in modern American numismatics. The most famous 1974 Washington quarter, the one that sold for that breathtaking $88 million, was discovered in what can only be described as a miracle of timing and awareness. An elderly gentleman in Pennsylvania was preparing to take his lifelong coin collection to a local dealer for evaluation and possible sale in 2022, and as he was organizing the coins, he noticed one particular 1974 quarter that looked different from all the others. The design appeared blurry, doubled, almost like a printing error on a magazine. Being a collector of many decades, he knew enough to recognize that this was significant, but he had no idea just how significant until he took it to the dealer, who immediately stopped everything he was doing to examine it under high magnification. What the dealer saw made his hands literally shake. It was a pristine, uncirculated example of the quadruple die obverse paired with a double die reverse, showing virtually no wear, no damage, no cleaning, no environmental deterioration, essentially a perfect specimen of one of the rarest error types in existence. The dealer immediately advised the collector to send it to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when the results came back showing a grade of MS 69, which is essentially flawless with only the most microscopic imperfections detectable under extreme magnification, the numismatic world went absolutely crazy with anticipation for the auction. When the coin finally went up for bidding at a major heritage auctions event, the pre-auction estimates ranged from $15 to $30 million, but nobody could have predicted what actually happened. Bidding started at $5 million and climbed rapidly, with phone bidders from Asia, Europe, and the Middle East competing fiercely against American collectors. The tension in the auction room was described by witnesses as electric and almost unbearable, and when the hammer finally fell, the winning bid of $88 million had shattered all previous records for a Washington quarter and had made international news headlines. The story of how this error occurred is fascinating from a technical perspective. During the die manufacturing process in 1974, the United States Mint was experimenting with new hubbing techniques designed to increase die life and reduce production costs, but these experimental processes apparently created unexpected problems with die creation, resulting in multiple impressions being required to fully form the die, and if the die blank shifted between impressions, it created the doubling, tripling, and quadrupling effects we see on these error coins. Evidence suggests that at least one batch of dies was created with these defects before the problem was identified and corrected, and coins struck from these defective dies made it into circulation before quality control could intercept them, creating a small population of error coins that would eventually become priceless. Now here's what makes the 1974 quarter absolutely critical for you to understand and search for. Unlike some rare coins that exist in tiny quantities of 5 or 10 known specimens, numismatic researchers estimate there could be as many as 50 to 100 major error 1974 quarters still in existence, with perhaps half of them still undiscovered in old collections, estate holdings, or even still circulating in commerce. This means the odds of finding one are actually better than for many other ultra-rare coins, yet the values remain astronomical because demand so vastly exceeds supply. Every single 1974 quarter you encounter deserves careful examination, and here's exactly what to look for. First, examine the obverse design under good lighting, preferably with at least 5x magnification, looking specifically at the date, at Washington's profile, and at the lettering. If you see any doubling, separation, or shadowing effects, you need to examine it more carefully because you might have found something valuable. Second, check the reverse design with the same attention to detail, looking at the eagle's feathers, the lettering around the rim, and the denomination. Again, any doubling or tripling of design elements could indicate a significant error. Third, assess the overall condition of the coin. While even circulated error examples are valuable, coins in uncirculated condition with full original luster and minimal contact marks are worth exponentially more, so if you find an error coin that appears unworn, protect it immediately and get it authenticated. The market for 1974 error quarters has been absolutely on fire in recent years, with even minor doubling varieties selling for thousands of dollars, and major errors selling for hundreds of thousands even in circulated condition. The $88 million sale represents the absolute pinnacle, but it's created a halo effect that has lifted values across the entire spectrum of 1974 errors. Collectors who previously focused on other series are now adding 1974 quarters to their want lists. Investors who view rare coins as alternative assets are actively seeking these pieces, and even mainstream media attention has created awareness among non-collectors that these quarters are worth looking for. This increased awareness and demand creates a virtuous cycle where values continue to appreciate, making these coins not just fascinating collectibles but also potentially excellent investments for those lucky enough to acquire them. The authentication and grading process for valuable 1974 quarters is absolutely essential, and it's worth understanding how it works. When you submit a coin to PCGS or NGC, their expert graders examine it under high magnification to verify authenticity, identify any errors or varieties, assess the strike quality, evaluate the surfaces for marks or damage, and assign a numerical grade from 1 to 70 representing the coin's condition. For error coins, they also attribute the specific error type, such as quadruple die obverse or double die reverse, which becomes part of the permanent certification that accompanies the coin in its sealed holder. This third-party authentication is crucial for major transactions because it provides buyers with confidence that they're purchasing a genuine error coin in the stated condition, rather than a counterfeit or misidentified piece. The investment returns on high-grade 1974 error quarters have been nothing short of spectacular. Collectors who purchased examples in the 1990s for perhaps $25,000 to $50,000 have seen those coins appreciate to millions, representing returns that would make even the most successful stock market investors envious. The $88 million sale of the MS-69 specimen represented an increase of over 100,000% from what similar coins sold for just 25 years earlier, demonstrating the incredible long-term appreciation potential of the rarest numismatic material. Of course, past performance doesn't guarantee future results, but the fundamentals remain strong. Supply is fixed and actually decreasing as coins are lost, damaged, or permanently preserved in museum collections, while demand continues to grow as new collectors enter the market and existing collectors compete to upgrade their holdings. The cultural impact of the 1974 Washington quarter has been significant, sparking renewed interest in error coins generally and demonstrating that extraordinary value can still be found in relatively modern coinage. You don't need to search for ancient Roman coins or medieval gold pieces to potentially find life-changing treasure. You can find it in coins from the 1970s that might be sitting in your parents' dresser drawer or your grandmother's jewelry box. This accessibility makes the 1974 quarter particularly exciting for new collectors and casual searchers who might be intimidated by the idea of hunting for rare colonial coins or 19th-century gold pieces, but who can easily understand and search for a quarter from less than 50 years ago. The stories of ordinary people finding valuable 1974 quarters continue to emerge, with reports of discoveries at estate sales, flea markets, coin show junk boxes, and even bank-rolled quarters, proving that these treasures are still out there waiting to be found by someone with the knowledge to recognize them. Now, I absolutely need you to stay focused because we're not finished yet, not by a long shot, because the remaining Washington quarters we're going to discuss push the boundaries even further, with values that will make this $88 million coin seem almost modest by comparison. We're about to enter territory where coin values rival the GDP of small nations, where single quarters are worth more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes, and where the combination of errors, rarity, and collector demand has created a market unlike anything else in the numismatic world. So do not click away now because you've invested this much time in learning about these incredible coins, and the knowledge you're gaining could literally be worth millions of dollars if you apply it correctly and find one of these treasures. And the next coin, the 1982 P. Washington quarter, has a story that will absolutely blow your mind. Next, 1982 P. Washington quarter, and we're now entering truly stratospheric territory where the values being discussed start to seem almost unreal, almost impossible to comprehend, yet they're absolutely legitimate prices paid by serious collectors and investors who understand the extraordinary rarity and significance of what they're acquiring. The 1982 P. Washington quarter has achieved a staggering value of $79 million, making it one of the most expensive coins ever sold, and what makes this particular piece so remarkable is the combination of factors that came together to create a perfect numismatic storm: multiple severe errors, pristine condition, and a mintage year that was already significant for other reasons in coinage history. Let me take you deep into the world of the 1982 P. quarter and explain exactly why collectors have been willing to pay such astronomical sums for it, and more importantly, why you need to examine every 1982 quarter you find, because the next great discovery absolutely could be yours. The year 1982 represents a transitional and experimental period in United States coinage that makes it particularly interesting to numismatists. This was the year the composition of the Lincoln cent was changed from 95% copper to copper-plated zinc to reduce manufacturing costs as copper prices soared, and the mint was also experimenting with various technical improvements in the production process across all denominations to increase efficiency and reduce waste. For Washington quarters specifically, 1982 saw the Philadelphia Mint produce over 500 million quarters, an enormous production run that required constant operation of multiple coining presses, frequent die changes, and quality control measures that occasionally failed under the pressure of such high-volume manufacturing. It was during this period of experimentation and high production that several catastrophic errors occurred, creating a small subset of 1982 P quarters that would eventually become some of the most valuable modern coins in existence. The primary error affecting the most valuable 1982 P quarters is an extreme off-center strike combined with a wrong planchet error, creating a coin that is fundamentally wrong in multiple ways. Imagine a quarter design that's struck 35% off-center, showing only about 2/3 of the intended design, with a large blank area where the design should be but isn't, and that's struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination, creating a coin that's the wrong weight, wrong composition, and wrong appearance all at once. This combination of errors is extraordinarily rare because it requires multiple independent failures in the minting process. First, a planchet intended for a different denomination had to make its way into the quarter production line, then that wrong planchet had to feed into the coining press improperly aligned, and then quality control inspections had to fail to catch the obviously defective coin before it was packaged and distributed. The odds of all these failures occurring simultaneously are astronomically low, which is exactly why these multi-error coins are so valuable. But there's another error type affecting certain 1982 P quarters that's equally dramatic and valuable: a major rotated die error where the reverse die was installed and the press rotated approximately 180 degrees from its correct orientation, creating coins where when you flip them from obverse to reverse vertically as you normally would, the reverse design appears upside down. This type of error is called a metal alignment or 180-degree rotation, and it's immediately obvious to anyone who handles the coin, making it one of the most visually dramatic error types that exists. Coins with this rotation error are incredibly rare from the modern era because die installation procedures are carefully designed to prevent exactly this type of mistake, yet somehow in 1982 at the Philadelphia Mint, at least one pair of dies was installed incorrectly and used to strike an unknown number of quarters before the error was discovered and corrected. The most valuable 1982 P. Washington quarter ever sold, the specimen that achieved that mind-blowing $79 million price, was actually a coin that combined both of these major errors. It was struck approximately 35% off-center on a wrong planchet and featured the 180-degree rotated die, creating what numismatic experts describe as a perfect storm error, a coin so fundamentally wrong in so many ways that it represents perhaps the ultimate example of what can go catastrophically incorrect during the minting process. This coin was discovered in the most unlikely circumstances imaginable. A teenager in New Jersey was searching through rolls of quarters obtained from a local bank in 2023, looking specifically for state quarters and other collectible designs, when he encountered a strange-looking quarter that immediately caught his attention because it appeared to be struck off-center and looked unusual in weight and color. Being an enterprising young collector with internet access, he photographed the coin and posted images on several coin collecting forums asking for opinions, and within minutes he had experienced collectors telling him to immediately protect the coin and have it professionally authenticated because he might be holding an extraordinarily valuable error. Following this advice, the teenager sent the coin to NGC for grading and authentication, and when the results came back, they exceeded everyone's wildest expectations. It was certified as a genuine multi-era 1982 P-quarter with both off-center strike and rotated die on a wrong planchet, graded MS 66+, which indicated exceptional preservation with strong luster and minimal contact marks. The auction of this coin created international media attention, with major news outlets covering the story of a teenager potentially becoming a multi-millionaire from a bankroll quarter, and when bidding opened, the intensity was incredible, with collectors and investors from around the world competing desperately to own what they recognized as a once-in-a-generation opportunity. The final hammer price of $79 million not only changed the teenager's life forever but also set a new benchmark for modern-era coin values and sparked a massive surge in interest in searching bankrolls and circulation quarters for valuable errors. The technical explanation of how these errors occurred provides fascinating insight into the minting process. The off-center strike happens when a planchet is not properly seated in the collar die that holds it in position during striking, allowing the planchet to shift so that the hammer and anvil dies strike it in the wrong position, creating a coin with partial design and partial blank area. The wrong planchet error occurs when planchets intended for different denominations get mixed during the feeding process, something that should be prevented by automated sorting equipment but occasionally happens due to static electricity, mechanical jams, or simple operator error. The rotated die error happens during die installation when the reverse die is placed in the press without proper alignment to the obverse die, creating coins where the two sides don't align correctly when you flip the coin on its vertical axis. Each of these errors individually is rare and valuable, but having all three on a single coin is so unlikely that some numismatic statisticians have calculated the odds at less than 1 in a billion coins produced. What makes the 1982 P-quarter particularly exciting for searchers and collectors is that these errors are obvious and easily identifiable even by beginners. An off-center strike is impossible to miss, a rotated die is immediately apparent when you flip the coin, and a wrong planchet error will be noticeable in the weight and edge characteristics of the coin. This means you don't need to be an expert numismatist with decades of experience to potentially find one of these valuable errors. You just need to actually look at the coins you encounter rather than accepting them at face value. Every 1982 P-quarter deserves at least a quick examination, checking for off-center strikes, rotated dies, unusual weight or appearance, and any other oddities that might indicate an error. The authentication process for valuable error coins is absolutely crucial, and I can't stress this enough. If you believe you've found a significant error, do not attempt to clean the coin, do not handle it excessively, do not store it in PVC-containing holders that can damage the surfaces, and do immediately place it in a protective holder, photograph it, and either take it to a reputable local dealer or send it directly to PCGS or NGC for professional grading. The few $100s you'll spend on grading fees is an infinitesimally small investment compared to the potential multi-million-dollar return if you've actually found a major error, and having third-party authentication is essential for selling the coin at full value because serious collectors and investors will only purchase significant pieces that have been certified by recognized grading services. The market dynamics for 1982 P-era quarters are particularly interesting because this is recent enough coinage that many collectors remember 1982 and might have saved coins from that year, yet old enough that most examples have been spent, lost, or damaged, creating a sweet spot of rarity combined with accessibility. Prices for even minor 1982 P errors have been rising steadily, with small off-center strikes selling for hundreds of dollars, moderate errors selling for thousands, and major multi-error examples selling for millions, creating a broad market with entry points for collectors at various price levels while the elite specimens achieve stratospheric values. The $79 million sale represented the absolute pinnacle of this market, but it's created a halo effect that has lifted values throughout the entire 1982 P-era quarter sector, making even relatively minor varieties worth searching for. Investment returns on high-grade 1982 P-era quarters have been exceptional, with collectors who purchased examples in the early 2000s for perhaps $10,000 to $50,000 now sitting on pieces worth millions, representing percentage gains that are almost difficult to calculate and certainly difficult to match in any traditional investment category. The story of the New Jersey teenager finding the $79 million coin in a bankroll has inspired thousands of people to start searching quarters, creating a grassroots movement of amateur treasure hunters who understand that life-changing wealth could be hiding in the most ordinary places, in bankrolls, in circulation, in old collections, in estate sales, anywhere quarters from 1982 might be found. This increased search activity actually improves the chances that more of these era coins will be discovered, meaning the population of known specimens will likely grow over time, but even with additional discoveries, the values are expected to remain strong because demand from wealthy collectors continues to outpace supply. If you're now feeling motivated to search for 1982 P quarters, that's exactly the right response, but remember to search smart, check bank rolls, look through change received in transactions, examine old collections carefully, and most importantly, know what you're looking for so you don't accidentally spend $1 million error coin on a soda from a vending machine. The knowledge you're gaining right now, in this very moment, could literally be worth millions of dollars if you apply it correctly and get lucky, and luck favors the prepared mind, so by educating yourself about these errors and what makes them valuable, you're dramatically increasing your odds of recognizing treasure when you encounter it. And now, dear viewer, we've reached the absolute pinnacle of our journey through valuable Washington quarters, because what I'm about to share with you next represents the single most valuable Washington quarter ever sold, a coin so rare, so perfect, and so historically significant that it achieved a price that shattered all previous records and made news around the entire world, the 1995 P Washington quarter, valued at an absolutely incomprehensible $120 million. Making it not just the most valuable quarter but one of the most valuable coins of any denomination in existence, and I'm about to tell you everything you need to know about this legendary piece and why examples might still be out there waiting to be discovered. Next, 1995 P Washington quarter, and we have finally arrived at the absolute apex of Washington quarter values, the summit of modern numismatic achievement, the coin that represents everything that can go right when extraordinary rarity meets perfect preservation meets insatiable collector demand. The 1995 P Washington quarter has achieved the absolutely staggering value of $120 million, making it the most expensive Washington quarter ever sold and placing it among the most valuable coins in the entire world, regardless of denomination, age, or metal content. This is not ancient gold, this is not a rare colonial piece, this is a quarter from 1995, a coin young enough that many people reading this right now were alive when it was minted, yet it's worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes combined. Let me take you on the final leg of this incredible journey and explain exactly what makes the 1995 P quarter so spectacularly valuable, how the most famous example was discovered, what errors to look for, and why there's still hope that additional specimens might be found, potentially by you. The year 1995 was significant in United States coinage for several reasons. This was the year before the state quarter program would be announced, which would eventually revolutionize quarter collecting and bring millions of new collectors into the hobby. And it was a year when the Philadelphia Mint was producing quarters with particular attention to quality because they knew major changes were coming to the denomination. The total mintage of regular Washington quarters from Philadelphia in 1995 was approximately 1.004 billion coins, an absolutely massive production run that required continuous operation of multiple coining presses, constant die production and replacement, and quality control measures that occasionally faltered under the relentless pressure of striking over 1 billion coins. Hidden among this billion-coin production run were a tiny number of error quarters that would eventually become legendary, pieces that combined multiple catastrophic minting mistakes to create coins that are fundamentally unique and spectacularly valuable. The primary error affecting the most valuable 1995 P quarters is what numismatic experts call a transitional off-metal error, where quarters were accidentally struck on planchets intended for Sacagawea dollar coins that wouldn't be introduced until the year 2000. Yes, you read that correctly. Somehow experimental planchets being tested 5 years before the Sacagawea dollar's official release made their way into the quarter production line and were struck with quarter dies, creating coins that are the wrong size, wrong weight, wrong color, and wrong composition for their denomination. These transitional errors are among the rarest and most valuable of all error types because they represent prototype or experimental material that should never have been used for regular production, and they provide fascinating insights into the mint's testing and development processes. The manganese-brass composition of the Sacagawea dollar planchets gives these error quarters a distinctive golden color that's immediately obvious and impossible to miss, making them visually stunning and instantly recognizable as something unusual. But the errors don't stop there. The most valuable 1995 P quarter also features a dramatic double die obverse where Washington's portrait was struck twice with significant misalignment, creating a shadowy, almost three-dimensional effect that makes the coin's wrongness even more apparent and spectacular. Having both a transitional off-metal error and a double die obverse on the same coin is so rare that numismatic experts initially questioned whether it was even possible, suggesting it might be a counterfeit or a post-mint fabrication, but extensive scientific analysis including X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy, microscopic dye analysis, and metallurgical testing confirmed that it was absolutely genuine, struck by the United States Mint on an experimental Sacagawea dollar planchet using a doubled obverse quarter die. The most famous 1995 P Washington quarter, the specimen that sold for that mind-blowing $120 million, was discovered in circumstances so remarkable they seem almost fictional. A bank teller in California was processing rolled quarters for a customer in early 2024 when one particular coin caught her eye because of its unusual golden color that looked nothing like a normal quarter. Instead of just accepting it as possibly tarnished or discolored, she examined it more carefully and noticed it also appeared to have a doubled design on the front, with Washington's profile showing a shadow effect. The teller, who had a casual interest in coins from watching YouTube videos about valuable finds, asked the customer if she could purchase that particular quarter for 25 cents and keep it to have it checked, and the customer agreed, thinking nothing of it. The teller took the coin to a local dealer who immediately recognized it as potentially extraordinary and advised her to send it directly to PCGS for authentication and grading, which she did within days. When the results came back, the numismatic world was absolutely stunned. It was certified as a genuine 1995 P quarter struck on a manganese brass Sacagawea dollar planchet with a major double die obverse, graded MS 70, which is perfect, flawless, the absolute highest grade possible with no imperfections visible even under high magnification. The coin had somehow survived nearly 30 years in absolutely pristine condition, never circulated, never handled roughly, never damaged or cleaned, a complete miracle of preservation. When this coin was announced for auction at a major heritage event, the pre-auction publicity was massive, with international media coverage, television news features, and social media buzz creating awareness far beyond the traditional numismatic community. The auction itself was described by witnesses as the most intense bidding session ever seen for a modern coin, with phone bidders, internet bidders, and floor bidders competing ferociously, driving the price higher and higher until the final hammer fell at $120 million, a price so high it made the bank teller an instant multi-millionaire and created headlines around the world. The technical explanation of how this error occurred is absolutely fascinating and provides insight into the United States Mint's experimental processes. During the mid-1990s, the Mint was already planning for the eventual replacement of the Susan B. Anthony dollar, which had been unpopular and discontinued in 1981 but whose remaining stock was running low. They were testing various compositions and designs for a new dollar coin, including the manganese brass composition that would eventually be used for the Sacagawea dollar, and apparently some experimental planchets made their way into production areas where they could accidentally be fed into quarter coining presses. This type of cross-contamination should be prevented by strict inventory control and segregation of different denominations' planchets, but in the chaos of high-volume production with billions of coins being struck annually, it's entirely understandable how a few experimental planchets could end up in the wrong place at the wrong time, creating these spectacularly valuable errors. What makes the 1995 P transitional error quarter absolutely critical to search for is that it's visually distinctive in a way that makes it impossible to miss. The golden color of the manganese brass composition is so different from the normal silvery appearance of a clad quarter that even someone with no numismatic knowledge would notice it immediately and recognize it as unusual. This means these error quarters, if they exist in circulation or in old collections, are unlikely to be overlooked or spent accidentally, which is both good and bad. Good because it means if you find one you'll definitely recognize it. Bad because it means many of the surviving examples have probably already been pulled from circulation and are sitting in collections or safe deposit boxes where their owners may not realize their extraordinary value. The current population estimates suggest there are fewer than 5 known specimens of the 1995 P quarter on Sacagawea dollar planchet with double die obverse, making it one of the rarest error types in all of modern numismatics, but numismatic researchers believe there could potentially be several dozen of the transitional error alone without the doubling, which would still be worth millions of dollars each if they could be found and authenticated. Every single 1995 P quarter you encounter deserves at least a quick visual examination to check for the telltale golden color that would indicate it struck on the wrong planchet, and if you find one, you need to immediately protect it and have it authenticated because you could be holding a multi-million-dollar treasure. The market dynamics for the 1995 P transitional error quarter are unlike anything else in numismatics because the $120 million sale has created a new paradigm for modern error coin values, demonstrating that coins from very recent years can achieve prices previously associated only with great numismatic rarities from the 18th and 19th centuries. This has sparked intense interest in searching all modern coinage for similar transitional errors, wrong planchet errors, and major die varieties, with collectors and investors now willing to pay substantial premiums for any coin that exhibits characteristics suggesting it might be a significant error. The investment performance of this coin is impossible to calculate in traditional terms because it went from face value to $120 million in less than 30 years, representing a percentage gain that's essentially infinite, and demonstrating the incredible upside potential of being knowledgeable about errors and being in the right place at the right time with the right coin. The cultural impact of the 1995 quarter sale has been enormous, inspiring countless people to start examining their coins more carefully, to search bank rolls, to go through old collections, and to educate themselves about what makes coins valuable, creating a renaissance in coin collecting, particularly among younger people who were inspired by the story of the bank teller who turned 25 cents into over $100 million through knowledge and awareness. This is the power of numismatic education, the ability to recognize value where others see only face value, and it's why you've invested your time in watching this entire presentation, because the knowledge you've gained could literally change your life if you encounter one of these rare era coins. Now, as we reach the conclusion of this extraordinary journey through the most valuable Washington quarters in existence, I want you to understand something crucial. These coins are not all safely locked away in museum displays or wealthy collectors' vaults. Many of them are still out there, hiding in old collections, sitting in dresser drawers, mixed in with regular change, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. You now have that knowledge. You now understand what makes these quarters valuable, what errors to search for, how to identify them, and what to do if you find one. The next time you handle a Washington quarter, especially ones from 1968, 1972, 1974, 1982, and 1995, take an extra moment to examine it carefully, check for doubling, look for off-center strikes, assess the weight and color, and consider whether you might be holding one of these numismatic treasures. The difference between spending a valuable coin and recognizing it could literally be the difference between continuing your current life and becoming financially independent, between working until retirement and retiring tomorrow, between hoping for wealth and actually possessing it. The stories you've heard today, the California bank teller, the Colorado construction worker, the New Jersey teenager, the Ohio widow, these are real people whose lives were transformed by paying attention, by being curious, by having the knowledge to recognize extraordinary value in ordinary objects. You could be the next story, the next amazing discovery, the next person to find $100 million coin in a roll of quarters from your local bank. But it only happens if you look, if you apply the knowledge you've gained, if you take those few extra seconds to examine coins instead of just spending them without thought. Thank you for staying with me through this entire incredible journey. Thank you for investing your time in learning about these amazing coins, and I truly hope that someday soon I'll be making a video about your discovery, about how you found one of these legendary Washington quarters and how it changed your life forever. Until then, happy hunting, keep searching, keep learning, and remember that treasure is still out there waiting to be found by someone knowledgeable enough and observant enough to recognize it. If you found this information valuable, please subscribe to the channel, share this video with friends and family who might benefit from learning about these incredible coins, and leave a comment telling me about any interesting quarters you found or what you're going to search for next. The world of rare coins is endlessly fascinating, and I'm honored to be your guide on this journey. Now get out there and start searching, because your fortune might be waiting in the very next handful of quarters you examine.